If President Biden is reelected, but the Senate flips and the House flips, could we still maybe? So all I'm saying is she'd be waiting until at the very earliest 2025.
In today's video, Attorney John Deaton discussed the latest with the SEC Ripple XRP lawsuit, the recent summary judgments from Ripple and the SEC, and what's next for the procedural process, likelihood of a settlement soon.
It sounds like this is different than before, but can you maybe explain why, I guess, even though things are different, she's still going to make a decision before then?
Well, listen, when I've heard a lot of people say, well, I don't think she's going to rule because she's going to wait for Congress. Well, she could be waiting 10 years for Congress. I mean, people have got to realize, yes, we see that because we have Patrick McHenry, who is the chairman of the Financial Service Committee in Congress, in the House, and we have Warren Davidson and Tom Emmer. These are pro-crypto congressmen that were able to, they're being more vocal now, right? Because they're in charge. But you got to remember, the Senate is still controlled by, guess who sits on the Senate Banking Committee? Elizabeth Warren. All right. And her buddy, of course, is Sherrod Brown, who's the chairman of the Banking Committee. So do you think one of those bills are going to be approved by Senator Warren while she's in an anti-crypto re-election campaign? Of course not. Is it going to be signed by the president? So the earliest we will ever see legislation for crypto that gets passed by the House, passed by the Senate, and signed into law by the President of the United States is when? 2025, at the end of 2025, if, let's say, if the Republicans are able to take the Senate and the presidency and keep the House, what's the chances of that happening? If President Biden is reelected, but the Senate flips and the House flips, could we still maybe? So all I'm saying is she'd be waiting until at the very earliest 2025, September, October 2025. Is she going to wait 2 years? No, never.
Theoretically, she could defer the ruling and just say, I'm not going to do anything on this? Or is it just a series of delays? How would that work? How's that?
No, she's not going to do that. I mean, listen, I was wrong by saying, what I said before was, I think if you average her decisions, how long she takes, like by looking at other big cases, she averaged right around 2 to 4 months from the time she ruled on the expert motion. So I said, if you just average it out, right? She had one case that took just shy of 6 months, one case that took 4 months. There was two cases that came out within weeks of the Daubert expert motion. I said, so if you average all that out, she averages a couple months from the expert decision. And so that's when I said, well, that would put us around May 6th. And I said, I'll be surprised if we don't get a ruling, but I won't be shocked. I'll be surprised, but not shocked. And so that's passed. And now we are in June, the beginning of June. Conventional wisdom is that because of that June 13th date, she'll probably not give her summary judgment decision until after all of those exhibits have been made public, because then her opinion will make more sense.
Yes.
Right. And so yes. I will be shocked. I can say this. I will be shocked if we do not get a decision from her by the end of September. I will absolutely be shocked then, because I don't see that happening. Not a decision of this magnitude.
Why is it more important if the appellate decision is a decision made at the appellate level?
Okay, so the best example for everyone to understand would be, look at the library judge's decision which is in the District of New Hampshire. And then you have Judge Torres's decision in the Ripple case in the Southern District. They're in different circuits. We have different circuits, appellate court circuits. In the New York case, the Ripple case, that's the Southern District of New York, which is the most prestigious, highly litigated district of all in the country. And it's in the Second Circuit. Rhode Island, where I am, and New Hampshire and Massachusetts, that's the First Circuit. And the appellate courts have different laws. So Judge Netburn has to follow what the Second Circuit says. Judge Barbados, I believe is how you say his name, in the library case, he has to follow what the First Circuit court said. So there's different laws applying. So the fact that library judge found in favor of the SEC is almost irrelevant to what Judge Torres will do. Doesn't mean she won't read it to look at his rationale, but he's got to apply different case law above him than she does. And so that's why when people would say, oh, Ripple's cooked because look what happened to the library, that's nonsense. She could completely ignore. She could say that judge is whacked. Like, I'm not listening to anything he has to say. Completely has no binding. But if the Second Circuit came out with a decision today that impacted the Ripple case, that changed the law, for example, she would have to follow it. And so, and then of course, when you get to the highest level, the Supreme Court, then everyone has to follow that. And so it's very interesting because, and a lot changed. Your readers and viewers, I should say, if you go to Texas, I can assure you that the appellate law is very different than the law in New England, right? Because you have different judges. Do you have liberal judges who are appointed by a liberal, or do you have conservative judges appointed by a conservative? And all of that applies to what law you give. And so what usually happens is you get competing decisions from the First Circuit and the Second Circuit, and then you need the Supreme Court to tell all the circuits this is the law. So the Howey case is the law for everyone.
So let me ask you this. If we do see a situation where XRP is a only digital asset with unique litigation centered around it, is that a catalyst for American adoption, or do you think there's other hurdles that we're waiting on? That kind of what I'm asking is, could we see utility after the resolution of the lawsuit?
Yeah, listen, a lot of people, and this is what, you guys were showing me a clip beforehand, and I'm glad you did, because I wrote it down of Warren Davidson. You were sharing something with me when he was interviewed, and he pointed out that America, the United States, represents 50% of all the capital that's in the world. So there's a lot of people out there, because I'm someone who from the very beginning said, look, I know Ripple's doing great. ODL was 800%, and they were expanding and getting overseas customers and doing great, the UAE and Singapore and all these places. I said, but you cannot underestimate the impact that this case has had on their business. You have to have the United States. If it represents 50% of all the capital in the world, you can't exclude that market. And so that's why XRP is not being offered on their ODL platform, because companies like Bank of America, those type of companies need certainty, regulatory certainty. And so once XRP has regulatory certainty and Ripple has this dark cloud over its head, gone forever, that's when I believe those utility gates open up.
Do you believe there's an agenda to shut down competitors in the United States and promote certain networks? I'm specifically referencing JP Morgan and Ethereum here.
Yes, that's when a lot of people called me a conspiracy theorist on January 1st, 2021. That's 9 days after the XRP lawsuit. 9 days. I filed that writ of mandamus, and I literally said, I don't know the exact reason yet. And I speculated. I said personal gain, political revenge. I laid out a few theories, but I said, one thing I'm certain of, this lawsuit appears to be used as a weapon. And so that's when we get to the conflicts. And so what we have is this thing called regulatory capture. It's when a certain group of investors capture the regulators, and they, you know, get these regulators to give them an advantage, a regulatory advantage. Because look how big of a regulatory advantage. If you say Bitcoin and ETH are not securities, but we're never going to comment on any other token, then you only have two that have regulatory. Joe Lubin used to go around back in 2019 and say, literally say, there's only two projects that have regulatory clarity, Bitcoin and ETH, and you can't develop on Bitcoin. And he said that leaves Ethereum as the only game in town. Those are his words. And so, yes, then you look at Quorum, right, was purchased by consensus from JP Morgan and the JP Morgan coin. And it gives the appearance that there was an advantage given to this project. And then we get this project, XRP, sued under those circumstances, walking out the door, everyone leaving, all the things that Joe Grunfest said, hey, don't do this. It makes you say, this looks bad, right? And that's why we really do need an investigation into how this went down.